Hello, reading room. Sorry I'm running late. I saw suspicious characters out there and no one seems to care. Same character who was stalking my husband. Same character who was stalking some other people at the church. And nobody could get rid of her. And she's around here. We are reading chapter number 2 in our book by Trevor Noah, Born a Crime, Stories from a South African Childhood. It is day 2 of this book. We are reading The Case for Christ on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and we're going to this memoir on Thursdays, and it was so good. So, I hope you are enjoying it as much as I am. South Africa is a mix of the old and the new, the ancient and the modern, and South African Christianity is a perfect example of this. We adopted the religion. This piece of crap light is driving me crazy. It's like one of those lights, you're just going to take it and you're just going to bang it right on the floor. We adopted the religion of our colonizers, but most people held on to the old ancestral ways too, just in case. In South Africa, faith in the Holy Trinity exists quite comfortably alongside belief in witchcraft, in casting spells, and putting curses on one's enemy. That's her. That's her. I come from a country where people are more likely to visit sangomas, shamans, traditional healers, pejoratively known as witch doctors, than they are to visit doctors of Western medicine. I come from a country where people have been arrested and tried for witchcraft in a court of law. I'm not talking about the 1700s. I'm talking about 5 years ago. I remember a man being on trial for striking another person with lightning. That happens a lot in the homelands. There are no tall buildings, few tall trees, nothing between you and the sky. So people get hit by lightning all the time. And when someone gets killed by lightning, everyone knows it's because somebody used Mother Nature to take out a hit. So if you had a beef with the guy who got killed, someone will accuse you of murder and the police will come knocking. Mr. Noah, you've been accused of murder. You used witchcraft to kill David Kibuka by causing him to be struck by lightning. What is the evidence? The evidence is that David Kibuka got struck by lightning and it wasn't even raining. And you go to trial. The court is presided over by a judge. There is a docket. There is a prosecutor. Your defense attorney has to prove lack of motive, go through the crime scene forensics, present a staunch defense, and your attorney's argument can be witchcraft isn't real. No, no, no. You'll lose. Huh. We must have read 2 chapters because we're on chapter 3. Trevor prayed. I grew up in a world run by women. My father was loving and devoted, but I could only see him when and where apartheid allowed. My uncle, Velile, my mom's younger brother, lived with my grandmother, but he spent most of his time at the local tavern getting into fights. The only semi-regular male figure in my life was my grandfather, my mother's father, who was a force to be reckoned with. He was divorced from my grandmother and didn't live with us, but he was around. His name was Temperance Noah, which was odd since he was not a man of moderation at all. He was boisterous and loud. His nickname in the neighborhood was Tat Shisha, which translates loosely to the smoking hot grandpa. And that's exactly who he was. He loved the ladies and the ladies loved him. He'd put on his best suit and stroll through the streets of Soweto on random afternoons, making everybody laugh and charming all the women he'd meet. He had a big, dazzling smile with bright white teeth, false teeth. At home, he'd take them out, and I'd watch him do that thing where he'd look like he was eating his own face. We found out much later in his life that he was bipolar, but before that we just thought he was eccentric. One time he borrowed my mother's car to go to the shop for milk and bread. He disappeared and didn't come home until late that night when we were way past the point of needing the milk or the bread. Turned out he'd passed a young woman at the bus stop, and believing no beautiful woman should have to wait for a bus, he offered her a ride to where she lived, 3 hours away. My mom was furious with him because he'd cost us a whole tank of petrol, which was enough to get us to work and school for 2 weeks. When he was up, you couldn't stop him, but his mood swings were wild. In his youth, he'd been a boxer, and one day he said I disrespected him, and now he wanted to box me. He was in his 80s. I was 12. He had his fists up circling me. "Let's go, Trevor. Come on, put your fists up. Hit me. I'll show you I'm still a man. Let's go." I couldn't hit him because I wasn't about to hit my elder. Plus, I'd never been in a fight, and I wasn't going to have my first one be with an 80-year-old man. I ran to my mom, and she got him to stop. The day after his pugilistic rage, he sat in his chair and didn't move or say a word all day. Temperance lived with his family, with his second family in the Meadowlands, and we visited them sparingly because my mom was always afraid of being poisoned, which was a thing that would happen. The first family were the heirs, so there was always the chance they might get poisoned by the second family. It was the Game of Thrones with poor people. We'd go into that house and my mom would warn me, "Trevor, don't eat the food." "But I'm starving." "No, they might poison us." "Okay, then why don't I just pray to Jesus and Jesus will take the poison out of the food?" Trevor, Sankela. So I saw my grandfather now and then, and when he was gone, the house was in the hands of women. In addition to my mom, there was my aunt Sabangile. She and her first husband, Dinky, had 2 kids, my cousins Malunksgasi and Bulelwa. Bangayo was a powerhouse, a strong woman in every sense, big-chested, the mother hen. Dinky, as his name implies, was dinky. He was a small man. He was abusive, but not really. It was more like he tried to be abusive, but he wasn't very good at it. He was trying to live up to this image of what he thought a husband should be, dominant, controlling. I remember being told as a child, "If you don't hit your woman, you don't love her." That was the talk you'd hear from men in bars and in the streets. Dinky was trying to masquerade as a patriarch that he wasn't. He'd slap my aunt and hit her, and she'd take it, and then eventually she'd snap and smack him down and put him back in his place. Dinky would always walk around like, "I control my woman." And you'd want to say, "Dinky, first of all, you don't. Second of all, you don't need to because she loves you." I can remember one day my aunt had really had enough. I was in the yard and Dinky came running out of the house screaming bloody murder. Sibangile was right behind him with a pot of boiling water, cursing at him and threatening to douse him with it. In Soweto, you were always hearing about men getting doused with pots of boiling water, often a woman's only recourse. Men were lucky if it was water. Some women use hot cooking oil. Water was if the woman wanted to teach her man a lesson. Oil meant she wanted to end it. My grandmother, Frances Noah, was the family matriarch. She ran the house, looked after the kids, did the cooking and cleaning. She's barely 5 feet tall, hunched over from years in the factory, but rock hard and still to this day very active and very much alive. Where my grandfather was big and boisterous, my grandmother was calm, calculating, with a mind as sharp as anything. If you need to know anything in the family history, going back to the 1930s, she can tell you what day it happened, where it happened, and why it happened. She remembers it all. My great-grandmother lived with us as well. We called her Coco. She was super old, well into her 90s, stooped and frail, completely blind. Her eyes had gone white, clouded over by cataracts. She couldn't walk without someone holding her up. She'd sit in the kitchen next to the coal stove, bundled up in long skirts and headscarves, blankets over her shoulders. The coal stove was always on. It was cooking, heating the house, heating water for baths. We put her there because it was the warmest spot in the house. In the morning, someone would wake her and bring her to sit in the kitchen. At night, someone would come take her to bed. That's all she did, all day, every day, sit by the stove. She was fantastic and fully with it. She just couldn't see and didn't move. Coco, my gran, would sit and have long conversations, but as a 5-year-old, I didn't think of Coco as a real person. Since her body didn't move, she was like a brain with a mouth. Our relationship was nothing but command prompts and replies, like talking to a computer. Good morning, Coco. Good morning, Trevor. Coco, did you eat? Yes, Trevor. Coco, I'm going out. Okay, be careful. Bye, Coco. Bye, Trevor. The fact that I grew up in a world run by women was no accident. Apartheid kept me away from my father because he was white. But for almost all the kids I knew on my grandmother's block in Soweto, apartheid had taken away their fathers as well, just for different reasons. Their fathers were off working in a mine somewhere, able to come home only during the holidays. Their fathers had been sent to prison. Their fathers were in exile, fighting for the cause. Women held the community together. There's some African language here. Wathen Abafazi, Wathen Imbokodo was the chant they would rally to during the freedom struggle. When you strike a woman, you strike a rock. As a nation, we recognize the power of women, but in the home, they were expected to submit and obey. In Soweto, religion filled the void left by absent men. I used to ask my mom if it was hard for her to raise me alone without a husband. She'd reply, just because I live without a man doesn't mean I've never had a husband. God is my husband. For my mom, my aunt, my grandmother, and all other women on our street, life centered on faith. Prayer meetings would rotate houses up and down the block based on the day. These groups were women and children only. My mom would always ask my uncle Velisle to join, and he'd say, I would join if there were more men, but I can't be the only one here. Then the singing and praying would start, and that was his cue to leave. For these prayer meetings, we'd jam ourselves into the tiny living area of the host family's house and form a circle. Then we would go around the circle offering prayers. The grannies would talk about what was happening in their lives. I'm happy to be here. I had a good week at work. I got a raise and I wanted to say thank you and praise Jesus. Sometimes they'd pull out their Bible and say, this scripture spoke to me and maybe it will help you. Then there would be a bit of song. There was a leather pad called the beat that you would strap to your palm like a percussion instrument. Someone would clap along on that, keeping time while everyone sang. Mansango, Velukani, singing I Jerusalema, Masango, Vilakani, Senenga I Jerusalemo. Lema. That's how it would go. Pray, sing, pray. Sing, pray, sing. Sing, sing, sing. Pray, pray, pray. Sometimes it would last for hours, always ending with an amen, and they could keep that amen going on for 5 minutes at least. Amen. 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 Many, many, many. Men, men, men. Amen. Oh, it goes on to the next page too. Then everyone would say goodbye and go home. Next night, different house, same thing. Tuesday nights, the prayer meeting came to my grandmother's house, and I was always excited for 2 reasons. 1, I got to clap along on the beat for the singing, and 2, I loved to pray. My grandmother always told me that she loved my prayers. She believed my prayers were more powerful because I prayed in English. Everyone knows that Jesus, who's white, speaks English. The Bible is in English. Yes, the Bible was not written in English, but the Bible came to South Africa in English, so to us, it's in English, which made my prayers the best prayers because English prayers get answered first. How do we know this? Look at white people. Clearly, they're getting through to the right person. Add to that Matthew 19:14, suffer little children to come unto me, Jesus said, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So if a child is praying in English to a white Jesus, that's a powerful combination right there. Whenever I prayed, my grandmother would say, that prayer is going to get answered. I can feel it. Women in the township always had something to pray for. Money problems, a son who'd been arrested, a daughter who was sick, a husband who drank. Whenever the prayer meetings were at our house, because my prayers were so good, my grandmother would want me to pray for everyone. She would turn to me and say, "Trevor, pray." And I'd pray. I loved doing it. My grandmother had convinced me that my prayers got answered. I felt like I was helping people. There is something magical about Soweto. Yes, it was a prison designed by our oppressors, but it also gave us a sense of self-determination and control. Soweto was ours. It had an aspirational quality that you don't find elsewhere. In America, the dream is to make it out of the ghetto. In Soweto, because there was no leaving the ghetto, the dream was to transform the ghetto. For the million people who lived in Soweto, there were no stores, no bars, no restaurants. There were no paved roads, minimal electricity, inadequate sewerage. But when you put 1 million people together in one place, they find a way to make a life for themselves. A black market economy rose up with every type of business being run out of someone's house. Auto mechanics, daycare, guys selling refurbished tires. The most common were the spaza shops and the she-beans. The spaza shops were informal grocery stores. People would build a kiosk in their garage, buy wholesale bread and eggs, and then resell them piecemeal. Everyone in the township bought things in minute quantities because nobody had any money. You couldn't afford to buy a dozen eggs at a time, but you could buy 2 eggs because that's all you needed that morning. You could buy a quarter loaf of bread, a cup of sugar. The she-beans were unlawful bars in the back of someone's house. They'd put chairs in their backyard and hang out an awning and run a speakeasy. The she-beans were where men would go to drink, and during prayer meetings and most any other time of the day as well. People built homes the way they bought eggs, a little at a time. Every family in the township was allocated a piece of land by the government. You'd first build a shanty on your plot, a makeshift structure of plywood and corrugated iron. Over time, you'd save up money and build a brick wall, one wall. Then you'd save up and build another wall. Then years later, a third wall, and eventually a fourth. Now you had a room, one room for everyone in your family to sleep, eat, do everything. Then you'd save up for a roof, then windows. Then you'd plaster the thing. Then your daughter would start a family. There was nowhere for them to go, so they'd move in with you. You'd add another corrugated iron structure into your brick room, and slowly over the years turn that into a proper room for them as well. Now your house had 2 rooms, then 3, maybe 4. Slowly over generations, you'd keep trying to get to the point where you had a home. My grandmother lived in Orlando East. She had a 2-room house, not a 2-bedroom house, a 2-room house. There was a bedroom, and then there was basically a living room, kitchen, everything else room. Some might say we lived like poor people. I prefer open plan. My mom and I would stay there during school holidays. My aunt and cousins would be there whenever she was on the outs with Dinky. We all slept on the floor in one room. My mom and me, my aunt and my cousins, my uncle and my grandmother and my great-grandmother. The adults had their own foam mattresses, and there was one big one that we'd roll out into the middle, and the kids slept on that. We had 2 shanties in the backyard that my grandmother would rent out to migrants and seasonal workers. We had a small peach tree and a tiny patch on one side of the house, and on the other side, my grandmother had a driveway. I never understood why my grandmother had a driveway. She didn't have a car. She didn't know how to drive, yet she had a driveway. All our neighbors had driveways, some with fancy cast iron gates. None of them had cars either. There was no future in which most of these families would ever have cars. There was maybe 1 car for every 1,000 people, yet almost everyone had a driveway. It was almost like building the driveway was a way of willing the car to happen. The story of Soweto is a story of the driveways. It's a hopeful place. Sadly, no matter how fancy you made your house, there was one thing you could never aspire to improve: your toilet. There was no indoor running water, just one communal outdoor tap, and one outdoor toilet shared by 6 or 7 houses. Our toilet was in a corrugated iron outhouse shared among the adjoining houses. Inside there was a concrete slab with a hole in it and a plastic toilet seat on top. There had been a lid at some point, but it had broken and disappeared long ago. We couldn't afford toilet paper, so on the wall next to the seat was a wire hanger with old newspaper on it for you to wipe. The newspaper was uncomfortable, but at least I stayed informed while I handled my business. The thing that I couldn't handle about the outhouse was the flies. It was a long drop to the bottom, and they were always down there eating on the pile, and I had an irrational, all-consuming fear that they were going to fly up and into my bum. One afternoon, when I was around 5 years old, I think I'm going to back this up just a little bit. My gran left me at home for a few hours to go run errands. I was lying on the floor in the bedroom reading. I needed to go, but it was pouring down rain. I was dreading going outside to use the toilet, getting drenched, running out there, water dripping on me from the leaky ceiling, wet newspaper, the flies attacking me from below. Then I had an idea. Why bother with the outhouse at all? Why not put some newspaper on the floor and do my business like a puppy? That seemed like a fantastic idea, so that's what I did. I took the newspaper, laid it out on the kitchen floor, pulled down my pants and squatted and got to it. When you shit as you first sit down, you're not fully in the experience yet. You're not yet a shitting person. You're transitioning from a person about to shit to a person who is shitting. You don't whip out your smartphone or a newspaper right away. It takes a minute to get the first shit out of the way and get in the zone and get comfortable. Once you reach that moment, that's when it gets really nice. It's a powerful experience, shitting. There's something magical about it, profound even. I think God made human shit in the way we do because it brings us back down to earth and gives us humility. I don't care who you are. We all shit the same. Beyonce shits, the Pope shits, the Queen of England shits. When we shit, we forget our airs and our graces. We forget how famous or rich we are. All that goes away. You are never more yourself than when you're taking a shit. You have the moment where you realize, this is me, this is who I am. You can pee without giving it a second thought. But not so with shitting. Have you ever looked in a baby's eyes when it's shitting? It's having a moment of pure self-awareness. The outhouse ruins that for you. The rain, the flies, you are robbed of your moment, and nobody should be robbed of that. Squatting and shitting on the kitchen floor that day, I was like, wow, there are no flies. There's no stress. This is really great. I'm really enjoying this. I knew I'd made an excellent choice, and I was very proud of myself for making it. I'd reached that moment where I could relax and be with myself. Then I casually looked around the room and I glanced to my left, and there, just a few feet away, right next to the coal stove, was Coco. It was like the scene in a Jurassic Park when the children turn and the T-Rex is right there. Her eyes were wide open, cloudy white, and darting around the room. I knew she couldn't see me, but her nose was starting to crinkle. She could sense that something was wrong. I panicked. I was mid-shit. All you can do when you're mid-shit is finish shitting. My only option was to finish as quietly and as slowly as I could, so that's what I decided to do. Then the softest plop of a little boy turd on the newspaper. Coco's head snapped toward the sound. Who's there? Hello, hello. I froze. I held my breath and waited. Who's there? Hello. I kept quiet, waited, then started again. Is somebody there? Trevor, is that you? Francis, hello, hello. She started calling out the whole family. Nambayeslo, Simbagayo, Malungisi, Belawa. Who's there? What's happening? It was like a game, like I was trying to hide and a blind woman was trying to find me using sonar. Every time she called out, I froze. It would be complete silence. Who's there? Hello. I'd pause, wait for her to settle back in her chair, and then I'd start up again. Finally, after what felt like forever, I finished. I stood up, took the newspaper, which is not quite the quietest thing, and I slowly folded it over. It crinkled. Who's there? Again, I paused, waited. Then I folded it over some more, walked over to the rubbish bin, placed my sin at the bottom, and gingerly covered it with the rest of the trash. Then I tiptoed back to the other room, curled up on the mattress on the floor, and pretended to be asleep. The shit was done, no outhouse involved, and Coco was none the wiser. Mission accomplished. An hour later, the rain had stopped. My grandmother came home. The second she walked in, Coco called out to her, "Frances, thank God you're here. There's something in the house." What was it? I don't know, but I could hear it, and there was a smell. My gran started sniffing the air. Dear Lord, yes, I can smell it too. Is it a rat? Did something die? It's definitely in the house. They went back and forth about it, quite concerned, and then, as it was getting dark, my mother came home from work. The second she walked in, my gran called out to her, "Oh, Nambayislo, Nambayislo. There's something in the house." What do you mean? Coco told her the story, the sounds, the smells. Then my mom, who had a keen sense of smell, started going around the kitchen sniffing. "Yes, I can smell it. I can find it. I can find it." She went to the rubbish bin and it's in here. She lifted out the rubbish, pulled out the folded newspaper underneath and opened it up, and there was my little turd. She showed it to Gran. "Look." "What? How did it get there?" Coco, still blind, still stuck in her chair, was dying to know what was happening. "What's going on?" she cried. "What's going on?" "Did you find it?" "It's shit," Mom said. "There's shit in the bottom of the dustbin." "But how?" Coco said. "There was no one here." "Are you sure there was no one here?" "Yes, I called out to everyone. Nobody came." My mother gasped. "We've been bewitched. It's a demon." For my mother, this was the logical conclusion, because that's how witchcraft works. If someone has put a curse on you or your home, there's always the talisman or totem, a tuft of hair or the head of a car, the physical manifestation of the spiritual thing, proof of the demon's presence. Once my mom found the turd, all hell broke loose. This was serious. They had evidence. She came into the bedroom. Trevor, wake up." "What?" I said, playing dumb. "What's going on?" "Come, there's a demon in the house." She took my hand and dragged me out of bed. It was all hands on deck, time for action. The first thing we had to do was go outside and burn the shit. That's what you do with witchcraft. The only way to destroy it is to burn the physical thing. We went out to the yard, and my mom put the newspaper with my little turd on the driveway, lit a match, and set it on fire. Then my mom and Gran stood around the burning shit, praying and singing songs of praise. The commotion didn't stop there, because when there's a demon around, the whole community has to join together to drive it out. If you're not part of the prayer, the demon might leave our house and go to your house and curse you. So we needed everyone. The alarm was raised, the call went out. My tiny Gran was out the gate, going up and down the block, calling to all the other old grannies for an emergency prayer meeting. "Come, we've been bewitched." I stood there, my shit burning in the driveway, my poor aged grandmother tottering up and down the street in a panic, and I didn't know what to do. I knew there was no demon, but there was no way I could come clean. The hiding I would have to endure. Good Lord, honesty was never the best policy when it came to a hiding. I kept quiet. Moments later, the grannies came streaming in with their Bibles through the gate and up the driveway, a dozen or more at least. Everyone went inside, the house packed. This was by far the biggest prayer meeting we'd ever had, the biggest thing that had ever happened in the history of our home, period. Everyone sat in the circle praying, and the prayers were strong. The grannies were chanting, murmuring and swaying back and forth, speaking in tongues. I was doing my best to keep my head low and stay out of it. Then my grandmother reached back and grabbed me, pulled me into the middle of the circle, and looked into my eyes. "Trevor, pray." "Yes," Mother said. "Help us. Pray, Trevor. Pray to God to kill the demon." I was terrified. I believed in the power of prayer. I knew that my prayers worked. So if I prayed to God to killing the thing that left the shit, and that thing that left the shit was me, and God was going to kill me, I froze. I didn't know what to do. But all the grannies were looking at me, waiting for me to pray. So I prayed, stumbling through as best I could. "Dear Lord, please protect us, from whoever did this, but like we don't know what happened exactly, and maybe it was a big misunderstanding, and maybe we shouldn't be quick to judge when we don't know the whole story. And I mean, of course, you know best, Heavenly Father, but maybe this time it wasn't actually a demon, because who can say for certain? So maybe cut whoever it was a break. It was not my best performance. Eventually I wrapped it up and sat back down. The praying continued. It went on for some time. Pray, sing, sing, pray, sing, sing, pray, pray. Then everyone finally felt that the demon was gone and life could continue. And we had the big amen, and everyone said good night and went home. That night I felt terrible. Before bed I quietly prayed, God, I am so sorry for all of this. I know this was not cool, because I knew God answers your prayers. God is your Father. He's the man who's there for you, the man who takes care of you. When you pray, he stops and he takes his time and he listens. And I had subjected him to 2 hours of old granny's praying when I knew that with all the pain and suffering in the world, he had more important things to deal with than my shit. When I was growing up, we used to get American TV shows rebroadcast on our stations. Doogie Howser, MD, Murder, She Wrote, Rescue 911 with William Shatner. Most of them were dubbed into African languages. Elf was in Afrikaans, Transformers, and Sotho. But if you wanted to watch them in English, the original American audio would be simulcast on the radio. I'm going to close that door. You could mute your TV and listen to that. Watching those shows, I realized that whenever black people were on screen speaking in African languages, they felt familiar to me. They sounded like they were supposed to sound. Then I'd listen to them in simulcast on the radio, and they would all have black American accents. My perception of them changed. They didn't feel familiar. They felt like foreigners. Language brings with it an identity and a culture, or at least the perception of it. A shared language says we're the same. A language barrier says we're different. The architects of apartheid understood this. Part of the effort to divide black people was to make sure we were separated, not just physically, but by language as well. In the Bantu schools, children were only taught in their home language. Zulu kids learned in Zulu. Tatswana kids learned in Tatswana. Because of this, we'd fall into the trap the government had set for us and fight among ourselves, believing that we were different. The great thing about language is that you can just as easily use it to do the opposite, convince people that they are the same. Racism teaches us that we are different because of the color of our skin, but because racism is stupid, it's easily tricked. If you're racist and you meet someone who doesn't look like you, the fact that he can't speak like you reinforces your racist preconceptions. He's different, less intelligent. A brilliant scientist can come over the border from Mexico to live in America, but if he speaks in broken English, people say, I don't trust this guy. But he's a scientist, and Mexican science maybe, I don't trust him. However, if the person who doesn't look like you speaks like you, your brain short circuits because your racism program has none of those introductions in the code. Wait, your mind says. The racism code says, if he doesn't look like me, he isn't like me. But the language code says, if he speaks like me, he is like me. Something is off here. I can't figure this out. Chapter 4, Chameleon. One afternoon I was playing with my cousins. I was a doctor and they were my patients. I was operating on my cousin Bulelwa's ear with a set of matches when I accidentally perforated her eardrum. All hell broke loose. My grandmother came running from the kitchen. Kwenska, What's happening? There was blood coming out of my cousin's head. We were all crying. My grandmother patched up Belva's ear and made sure to stop the bleeding, but we kept crying because clearly we'd done something we were not supposed to do, and we knew we were going to be punished. My grandmother finished up Belva's ear and whipped out a belt, and she beat the shit out of Belva. Then she beat the shit out of Lungisi, too. She didn't touch me. Later that night, my mother came home from work. She found my cousin with a bandage over her ear and my gran crying at the kitchen table. What's going on? My mom said. Oh, Nambai Yiselo, she said. Trevor is so naughty. He's the naughtiest child I've ever come across in my life. Then you should hit him. I can't hit him. Why not? Because I don't know how to hit a white child, she said. A black child, I understand. A black child, you hit them and they stay black. Trevor, when you hit him, he turns blue and green and yellow and red. I've never seen those colors before. I'm scared I'm going to break him. I don't want to kill a white person. I'm so afraid. I'm not going to touch him. And she never did. My grandmother treated me like I was white. My grandfather did too, only he was even more extreme. He called me Masta. In the car, he insisted on driving me as if he were my chauffeur. Masta must always sit in the back seat. I never challenged him on it. What was I going to say? I believe your perception of race is flawed, grandfather. No, I was 5. I sat in the back. There were so many perks to being white in a black family, I can't even front. I was having a great time. My own family basically did what the American justice system does. I was given more lenient treatment than black kids. Misbehavior that my cousins would have been punished for, I was given a warning and let off. And I was way naughtier than either of my cousins. It wasn't even close. If something got broken or if something was stealing Granny's cookies, it was me. I was trouble. My mom was the only force I truly feared. She believed if you spare the rod, you spoil the child. But everyone else said, no, he's different. And they gave me a pass. Growing up the way I did, I learned how easy it is for white people to get comfortable with a system that awards them all the perks. I knew my cousins were getting beaten for things that I'd done, but I wasn't interested in changing my grandmother's perspective because that would mean I'd get beaten too. Why would I do that? So that I'd feel better? Being beaten didn't make me feel better. I had a choice. I could champion racial justice in our home, or I could enjoy Granny's cookies. I went with the cookies. At that point, I didn't think of the special treatment as having to do with color. I thought of it as having to do with Trevor. It wasn't. Trevor doesn't get beaten because Trevor is white. It was Trevor doesn't get beaten because Trevor is Trevor. Trevor can't go outside. Trevor can't walk without supervision. It's because I'm me. That's why this is happening. I had no other points of reference. There were no other mixed kids around so that I could say, oh, this happens to us. Nearly 1 million people lived in Soweto. 99.9% of them were black. And then there was me. I was famous in my neighborhood just because of the color of my skin. I was so unique, people would give directions using me as a landmark. The house on Makailima Street, at the corner, you'll see a light-skinned boy. Take a right there. Whenever the kids in the street saw me, they'd yell, Ndoda Yamlunga, the white man. Some of them would run away. Others would call out to their parents to come look. Others would run up and try to touch me to see if I was real. It was pandemonium. What I didn't understand at the time was that the other kids genuinely had no clue what a white person was. Black kids in the township didn't leave the township. Few people had televisions. They'd seen the white police roll through, but they'd never dealt with the white person face to face ever. I'd go to funerals and I'd walk in and the bereaved would look up and see me and they'd stop crying. They'd start whispering. Then they'd wave and say, oh, like they were more shocked by me walking in than by the death of their loved ones. I think people felt like the dead person was more important because a white person had come to the funeral. After a funeral, the mourners all go to the house of the surviving family to eat. 100 people might show up, and you've got to feed them. Usually, you get a cow and slaughter it. and your neighbors come over and help you cook. Neighbors and acquaintances eat outside in the yard and in the street, and the family eats indoors. Every funeral I ever went to, I ate indoors. It didn't matter if we knew the deceased or not. The family would see me and invite me. Awanakavumila umtana wamlunga. All right, this is a long sentence. They'd say, you can't let the white child stand outside. Bring him in here. As a kid, I understood that people were different colors, but in my head, white and black and brown were like types of chocolate. Dad was the white chocolate, Mom was the dark chocolate, and I was the milk chocolate. But we were all just chocolate. I didn't know any of it had anything to do with race. I didn't know what race was. My mother never referred to my dad as white or to me as mixed. So when the other kids in Soweto called me white, even though I was light brown, I just thought they had their colors mixed up, like they hadn't learned them properly. Ah, yes, my friend, you've confused aqua with turquoise. I can see how you made that mistake. You're not the first. I soon learned the quickest way to bridge the race gap was through language. Soweto was a melting pot, families from different tribes and homelands. Most kids in the township spoke only their home language, but I learned several languages because I grew up in a house where there was no option but to learn them. My mom made sure English was the first language I spoke. If you're black in South Africa, speaking English is the one thing that can give you a leg up. English is the language of money. English comprehension is equated with intelligence. If you're looking for a job, English is the difference between getting the job or staying unemployed. If you're standing in the dock, English is the difference between getting off with a fine or going to prison. After English, Xhosa was what we spoke around the house. When my mother was angry, she'd fall back on her home language. As a naughty child, I was well versed in Xhosa threats. They were the first phrase I picked up, mostly for my own safety. Phrases like Nidza, Kubetha, and Loko, I'll knock you upside the head, or Sandenji, Nidini, Samtwana, you idiot of a child. It's a very passionate language. Outside of that, my mother picked up different languages here and there. She learned Zulu because it's similar to Xhosa. She spoke German because of my father. She spoke Afrikaans because it is useful to know the language of your oppressor. Sotho she learned in the streets. Living with my mom, I saw how she used language to cross boundaries, handle situations, navigate the world. We were in a shop once, and the shopkeeper right in front of us turned to his security guard and said in Afrikaans, "Follow those blacks in case they steal something." My mother turned around and said in beautiful, fluent Afrikaans, it's a whole sentence, "Why don't you follow these blacks so you can help them find what they're looking for?" "Jammer," he said, apologizing in Afrikaans then. And this was the funny thing. He didn't apologize for being racist. He merely apologized for aiming his racism at us. "Oh, I'm sorry," he said. "I thought you were like the other blacks. You know how they love to steal." I learned to use language like my mother did. I would simulcast, give you the program in your own tongue. I'd get suspicious looks from people just walking down the street. "Where are you from?" they'd ask. I'd reply in whatever language they'd addressed me in, using the same accent they used. There would be a brief moment of confusion, and then the suspicious look would disappear. "Oh, okay, I thought you were a stranger. We're good then." It became a tool that served me my whole life. One day, as a young man, I was walking down the street, and a group of Zulu guys was walking behind me, closing in on me, and I could hear them talking to one another about how they were going to mug me. "Let's get this white guy. You go to his left, and I'll come up behind him." I didn't know what to do. I couldn't run, so I just spun around really quick and said, "Yo, guys, why don't you just mug someone together? I'm ready. Let's do it. Yo, guys, why don't we just mug someone together? I'm ready. Let's do it." They looked shocked for a moment, and then they started laughing. "Oh, sorry, dude. We thought you were something else." We weren't trying to take anything from you. We were trying to steal from white people. Have a good day, man. They were ready to do me violent harm until they felt we were part of the same tribe, and then we were cool. That and so many other smaller incidents in my life made me realize that language, even more than color, defines who you are to people. I became a chameleon. My color didn't change, but I could change your perception of my color. If you spoke to me in Zulu, I replied to you in Zulu. If you spoke to me in Tswana, I replied to you in Tswana. Maybe I didn't look like you, but if I spoke like you, I was you. As apartheid was coming to an end, South Africa's elite private schools started accepting children of all colors. My mother's company offered bursaries, scholarships for underprivileged families, and she managed to get me into Maryvale College, an expensive private Catholic school. Classes taught by nuns, mass on Friday, the whole bit. I started preschool there when I was 3, primary school when I was 5. In my class, we had all kinds of kids, black kids, white kids, Indian kids, colored kids. Most of the white kids were pretty well off. Every child of color pretty much wasn't. But because of scholarships, we all sat at the same table. We wore the same maroon blazers, the same gray slacks and skirts. We had the same books. We had the same teachers. There was no real separation. Every clique was racially mixed. Kids still got teased and bullied, but it was over usual kid stuff, being fat or being skinny, being tall or being short, being smart or being dumb. I don't remember anybody being teased about their race. I didn't learn to put limits on what I was supposed to like or not like. I had a wide breadth to explore myself. I had crushes on white girls. I had crushes on black girls. Nobody asked me what I was. I was Trevor. It was a wonderful experience to have, but the downside was that it sheltered me from reality. Maryvale was an oasis that kept me from the truth, a comfortable place where I could avoid making a tough decision. But the real world doesn't go away. Racism exists. People are getting hurt. And just because it's not happening to you doesn't mean it's not happening. And at some point, you have to choose. Black or white, pick a side. You can try to hide from it. You can say, oh, I don't pick sides. But at some point, life will force you to pick a side. At the end of grade 6, I left Maryvale to go to H.A. Jack Primary, a government school. I had to take an aptitude test before I started, and based on the results of the test, the school counselor told me, you're going to be in the smart classes, the A classes. I showed up for the first day of school and went to my classroom. Of the 30 or so kids in my class, almost all of them were white. There was one Indian kid, maybe 1 or 2 black kids, and me. Then recess came. We went out on the playground. The black kids were everywhere. It was an ocean of black kids, like someone had opened a tap and all the black had come pouring out. I was like, where were they all hiding? The white kids I'd met that morning, they were in one direction. The black kids went in another direction. And I was left standing in the middle, totally confused. Were we going to meet up later on? I did not understand what was happening. I was 11 years old, and it was like I was seeing my country for the first time. In the townships, you don't see segregation because everyone is black. In the white world, anytime my mother took me to a white church, we were the only black people there, and my mom didn't separate herself from anyone. She didn't care. She'd go right up and sit with the white people. And at Maryvale, the kids were mixed up and hanging out together. Before that day, I had never seen people being together and yet not together, occupying the same space, yet choosing not to associate with each other in any way. In an instant, I could feel how the boundaries were drawn. Groups moved in color patterns across the yard, up the stairs, down the halls. It was insane. I looked over at the white kids I'd met that morning. 10 minutes earlier, I thought I was at school where they were a majority. Now I realized how few of them there actually were compared to everyone else. I stood there awkwardly by myself in this no man's land in the middle of the playground. Luckily, I was rescued by the Indian kid from my class, a guy named Thiessen Pillay. Thiessen was one of the few Indian kids in school, so he'd noticed me, another obvious outsider, right away. He ran over to introduce himself. Hello, fellow anomaly. You're in my class. Who are you? What's your story? We started talking and hit it off. He took me under his wing, the artful dodger, to my bewildered Oliver. Through our conversation, it came up that I spoke several African languages, and Thiessen thought a colored kid speaking black languages was the most amazing trick. He brought me over to a group of black kids. Say something, he told them, and he'll show you he understands you. One kid said something in Zulu, and I replied to him in Zulu. Everyone cheered. Another kid said something in Xhosa, and I replied to him in Xhosa. Everyone cheered. For the rest of recess, Thiessen took me around to different black kids on the playground. Show them your trick. Do your language thing. The black kids were fascinated. In South Africa back then, it wasn't common to find a white person or a colored person who spoke African languages. During apartheid, white people were always taught that those languages were beneath them. So the fact that I did speak African languages immediately endeared me to the black kids. How come you speak our languages, they said. Because I'm black, I said, like you. You're not black. Yes, I am. No, you're not. Have you not seen yourself? They were confused at first because of my color. They thought I was a colored person. But speaking the same languages meant I belonged to their tribe. It just took them a moment to figure it out. It took me a moment too. At some point, I turned to one of them and said, "Hey, how come I didn't see you guys in any of my classes?" It turned out they were in the B classes, which also happened to be the black classes. That same afternoon, I went back to the A classes, and by the end of the day, I realized that they weren't for me. Suddenly, I knew who my people were, and I wanted to be with them. I went to see the school counselor. "I'd like to switch over," I told her. "I'd like to go to the B classes." She was confused. "Oh, no," she said. "I don't think you want to do that." "Why not?" "Because those kids are, you know." "No, I don't know. What do you mean?" "Look," she said, "you're a smart kid. You don't want to be in that class." "But aren't the classes the same? English is English, math is math." "Yeah, but that class is, those kids are going to hold you back. You want to be in the smart class." "But surely there must be some smart kids in the B class." "No, there aren't. But all my friends are there." "You don't want to be friends with those kids." "Yes, I do." We went back and forth. Finally, she gave me a stern warning. "You do realize the effect this will have on your future. You do understand what you're giving up. This will impact the opportunities you'll have open to you for the rest of your life." "I'll take that chance." I moved to the B classes with the black kids. I decided I'd rather be held back with people I liked than move ahead with people I didn't know. Being at H.A. Jack made me realize I was black. Before that recess, I'd never had to choose, but when I was forced to choose, I chose black. The world saw me as colored, but I didn't spend my life looking at myself. I spent my life looking at other people. I saw myself as the people around me, and the people around me were black. My cousins are black, my mom is black, my gran is black. I grew up black. Because I had a white father, because I'd been in white Sunday school, I got along with the white kids, but I didn't belong with the white kids. I wasn't a part of their tribe. But the black kids embraced me. "Come along," they said. "You're rolling with us." With black kids, I wasn't constantly trying to be. With black kids, I just was. All right, that's it for 2 chapters and a couple small excerpts as well that introduce each chapter. Those are some excerpts he uses to introduce those chapters. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. We are finished with our 3 days on. We are about ready to go to our 4 days off. Hopefully you have found something that you want to do to help your mind, body, and spirit become healthier on those 4 days off. Maybe I've given you some ideas. I hope that's the case. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. It is day 360. It is June 11th in the classroom. Thanks so much for joining me here, where I am the teacher bringing you a healthier mind, body, and spirit. Thanks.